Hi Year 6, thanks for your hard work in the lesson today. You're definitely developing, getting more confident in solving different types of linear equations, but there's just a couple of things I want to go through with you. It was great that most of you are much more confident dealing with negative numbers, but there were still a couple of issues relating to negative numbers, so I'm going to go through these with you and also look at how we expand brackets, because that caused a few problems for some of you too. So, if we've got an equation like the one above, 9 add 6x equals minus 11 add x. What was great was that many of you realised that the best thing or the easiest thing to do was to deal with that negative number straight away, that minus 11. So most of you started by adding 11 to both sides of the equation, so that you were left with 11 and 9, which makes 20, and you've still got your 6x equals minus 11 plus 11 is nothing, so you're just left with x on that side of the equals sign. Okay, now after this, what was really great is that lots of you could see that it's easier in terms of not dealing with negative numbers if you now subtract x from both sides, rather than subtracting 6x, which will leave you with a negative number, and we talked about that last week. So you can actually solve it either way, but what's really important is that if you do take x from both sides, so you've got 20, add 5x, because 6x take away x leaves 5x, and then on the other side of the equation you've got x take away x, which is nothing. So the next step then, we want to isolate the value onto one side and the x onto the other. So actually, if you take minus 20 from both sides, you're left with 5x equals minus 20, and it's straightforward from here. We can divide by 5, so x equals minus 4. Okay, now some of you did exactly that and got that solution. A couple of you got confused and you wrote that after you'd taken away the 20, you moved your equal sign and just said that 20 equals 5x, which isn't quite true, and you can check that by substituting minus 4 back into the equation. Okay, there is another option, so I will show that to you. If once you've added 11 to both sides, so you've got 20 add 6x equals x. Instead of taking away x, you could take away 6x, and then automatically you'd have x on one side of your equation and a value on the other. So if I subtract 6x, I've got 20 equals minus 5x, because x take away 6x will leave me minus 5x. If I divide both sides by 5, I've got 4 equals minus x. Now we had a discussion about this in the lesson and what to do here. We don't want to leave that x as minus x, and we talked through in the lesson why if we multiply by minus 1 we can make that positive. So we're going to do that to both sides. 4 times minus 1 is minus 4. And minus x times minus 1, because if we multiply a negative by another negative, we get a product which is positive, will actually just leave us with x, which is what we're looking for. So x equals minus 4. Both ways get us to the answer. It doesn't really matter which way you do it, as long as you make sure you're dealing with the negative numbers in the right way. There's one other equation I'd like to go through with you, which some of you found really tricky, and this equation above involves brackets. So we've got minus 5 and then brackets y minus 6, close brackets, equals 5. So what you need to do first here, if you see brackets within an equation, is to expand the brackets. And the way you do that is to multiply both items inside the bracket by whatever's outside. You have to make sure that you're really confident dealing with positive and negative numbers, and that you know if your result will be positive or negative. So let's have a look. Minus 5 times y will give us minus 5y. And then we've got minus 5 times minus 6. So that's going to leave us with positive 30 equals 5. At this point, quite a few of you did make a mistake and you wrote minus 30. But remember, if we times a negative number by another negative number, the product is positive. So you have to make sure that you've used the correct sign in front of that number, and in this case it's definitely positive 30. From here it should be fairly straightforward for you to solve. So you have a choice as always, so you can either take 30 from this side or you can subtract 5 from both sides. It doesn't really matter which way you do that. Some of you might find it easier to subtract the 5, but that will leave you with an additional step. I'm actually going to subtract 30 from both sides, and the reason I'm doing that is then I get y on one side of the equation and a value on the other. So I'm left with minus 5y equals 5 take away 30, so that's negative or minus 25. Minus 5y equals minus 25. I'm going to divide by 5, so I get minus y equals minus 5. And once again, just like in the last example, I don't want to leave y as a negative value, so I'm going to multiply by minus 1. Remember, if we multiply a negative number by another negative number, we're left with a positive value. So minus y times minus 1 will leave me with positive y, and minus 5 times minus 1 will leave me with positive 5. So for this equation, y equals 5.